Today's daf we're going to be learning is Nazir Daf Yud Bet. This is the daf for Shabbat. Today's daf is sponsored by Susan Gruber-Vishner in loving memory of her father, Everett Gruber, Yehuda Gedalia ben Sender, Chaim Vipera, on the 100th anniversary of his birth. My father deeply loved Jewish learning, Torah study, and his family. We're going to get started right now from the very bottom of Yud Aleph Amud Bet. We're going to have a very interesting sugya today, which connects with other sugyot in Shas. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. So a statement is passed down in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Ha'omer l'shlucho. Somebody says to his messenger, or a messenger, it's going to sound like a little bit of a strange situation. Say v'kadesh li'isha stam. Go out and find some woman and betroth her to me. He doesn't say which woman. Asur, now you're missing a few words here. That aleph if you have the text of the Gemara in front of you, it sends you to the Hagahot Abach, which is a notes indicating words that could be missing. The Bach added edits to the text. He says, Isha stam v'met hashaliach. In other words, first you say go betroth the random woman. Then what happens? The messenger dies. Now you're a little bit stuck because why? Well, what's going to happen is this man who sent this messenger on a very strange mission, go betroth me a random woman, asur b'chol hanashim, will now be forbidden to marry any woman at all. Okay, what's the issue? Well, the issue is, number one, adam shaliach oseh shlichuto. Number one, we assume the shaliach did whatever he was sent to do. We just assume if you send the messenger will get the job done. This isn't always true, but let's be optimistic. Normally, you do send someone to do it, they will do it. Number two, since he didn't tell him exactly who to betroth, he has no idea which woman in the world is betrothed to him. This now raises a huge problem. He can't marry anybody because he's not allowed to marry a woman who's the sister, mother, sister, granddaughter, grandmother of the woman he married or betrothed. So now the issue is any woman is could be one of those women. Now, of course, you say, wait a minute, majority rules. Why don't we hold majority rules here? We go by the majority. Most women in the world are not betrothed to, are not related to, right? This one woman that was the one he betrothed. It seems a little strange. But such paskins Rabbi Yochanan, to which Reish Lakish raises a question. Okay, right now, I just want to point out the structure here. We're totally not connected to our Mishna at this point, but eventually, in the course of the discussions about this case, we're going to circle back to our Mishna, but not for a little while. Itvi Reish Lakish the Rabbi Yochanan. Reish Lakish brings a Mishna in Kinot. Kinot, we mentioned recently with a kuf, is nests of birds, and it's a whole masechet all about the two bird offerings that you bring together, an ola and a chatat, in different situations like a yoledet, like a Nazir who became impure, etc. Now, you have kain stuma, you have a pair of birds, and you didn't designate, normally one is an ola, a burnt offering, and one is a chatat, a sin offering. You didn't designate, in this case, which was for which is an ola, which is a chatat. Sheparcha gozal echad mehem la'avir ha'olam. One of them, happens with birds, flew away, and you lost one of them. I already sanctified it, and it flew away. Oh, sheparcha leben chataot hametot, or one of the birds went into a mix of birds that were left over from sin offerings that were designated as sin offerings, but the owner died or something like that, and they're left to die. Oh, shemet echad mehem, or one of them died. Either which way, we now have a situation where we don't have the second bird. Yikach zug lasheni. You take one more, you find one more bird, you find another bird, and you pair it off with the other one. Since she didn't designate which was for which, it's fine. Now, they're going to say, Ve'ilu ken meforeshet in lo takana. Now, number one, inference, if it was a specific meaning, you specify which bird went for which. One is an ola, one is a chatat, we can infer from here there's no takana, there's no resolution. Because one, we don't know the one that's left, whether it was the ola or chata. If it was the ola, you can offer an ola if you're always questioned about an ola, you can always sacrifice it out of doubt. But a chata can't be sacrificed out of doubt. So now we're stuck. If you designated one for an ola, one for a chatat, we're not sure which one it was, and then we don't know which one to fill in with, so you're stuck. In other words, the one that's left there, we don't know what to do with, so you have to pick a new pair. The ilu shar kinnim ba'alma mitachnan. And by the way, that one that was be left would be a safek chatat, and it would have to be left with the chatat that are left to die. And another thing to notice here is shar kinnim ba'alma mitachnan. All other pairs of birds in the world, in other words, what happens now? We have a bird on the loose, and that bird is sanctified already. So if it was sanctified for my sacrifice, you can't sanctify it for yours. So now, if we say that this man, going back to our case, every woman is potentially the sister, mother, grandmother, granddaughter, whatever of the person, he can't marry anybody. Why is he allowed? Is anyone in the world now allowed to take birds and not be worried that one of those birds is, right? If I take a set of birds, maybe that bird is the one that's flying around. To which the Gemara says, right? So first let's say the question, maybe each one, when I go to find a bird, maybe each one is that bird that flew away that I now can't use for my sacrifice. So Amrale, to which the answer is, Rabbi Yochanan says back to him, Ka'amina ana isha delonaida. I was talking about a woman who doesn't move from place to place. V'amar li'at isura denayid, and you're bringing me an example of an isur which is flying around. And why should that matter? Let's get back to that in a minute. Okay, we don't yet know why that matters, but that's an important distinction he makes. Maybe you'll say, wait a minute, what do you mean? Women are stuck in their place? Right, by the way, this isn't because women have to be in the house, but women walk around. Maybe he finds her in the shuk and he betroths her. That's like a bird, right? It's wandering around. She could also wander around. The difference is that she goes back to her home always. She has a home base. So she's considered what we call in halacha kavua. She's in a set place, even if she happens not to be at that given moment. But the bird doesn't go back to its original place. It doesn't have a home per se. So therefore, there's no home, and therefore we follow majority. Now, what's the connection? So if you might remember, there's a very famous sugya of the 9 stores, right? The 9 kosher stores, and there's one non-kosher store, and we find a piece of meat in the middle of all those stores. Or I go into one of the stores and I don't know which store, and I bought a piece of meat. I don't know which butcher shop I bought it from. Was it the kosher or the non-kosher? So we say the following. If I'm in the store, that's what we call kol kavua. If it's in its home locale, like the woman who's in her home. Kol kavua kemechtzal mechtzadami. Every safek is considered 50-50. It could be it's the kosher store. It could be it's the non-kosher store that I went into. Since it's in its place, we view it as 50-50. If it's in between all the stores, and the question is, which store did it come from? Then we go by the majority. That's the bird. If I pick out a bird and the birds wander around, I don't know where it came from. I view it as part of the majority of all birds, and the majority of all birds weren't sanctified to somebody else. So that's why we just make this distinction. What's the thought process behind this? It's a very good question, and something that the Achronim try to figure out. What exactly is the conceptual difference between the two? I'll give you one that to me makes a lot of sense, although again, nothing is perfect. So maybe I'll even give you 2. One I understand better than I can explain more clearly than the other, but maybe I'll try them both anyway. One explanation is that we view this as, what are the possibilities? So it depends what the question we're asking. When you're in the store and you buy a piece of meat and then you walk out and you don't remember which store you went into, was it the kosher or the non-kosher? So the question is, either it was the kosher store or it was the non-kosher store. So your list of possibilities are 2. Right? If the question is, I have a piece, and when it's 2, it's equal and you don't know which way to go, so we have to be strict. If it's a piece of meat outside the store, then the question is, which store did it come from? Then I have 10 possibilities, and 9 out of the 10 are kosher stores. So let's apply this to our woman. So if you go to marry someone, and the question is she a relative or is she not a relative? And the answer is, right, 50-50. If we're talking about a bird, and I found a bird, the question is, where did this bird come from? And then, right, it could be, we don't know, right, because I have this bird it's not in its given place. Then where did it come from? Answer is probably it came from, right? It could be from anywhere. And then the majority rules. Majority are not birds that were designated. That's one way of looking at it. Again, it's not a perfect answer, but it's a possible way of viewing it. Another answer is to say that in the kavua, when something is in its given place, we view things as, again, you have to question why exactly this is, but there are some that are permitted, there are some that are forbidden, and everything that's permitted, let's go with the stores or the women, right? All women that are permitted are called permitted women. All women that are forbidden are called forbidden women. We view those as two different categories. So when they don't move, right, the stores, there's kosher stores, there's non-kosher stores. All the kosher stores are one unit, all the non-kosher stores are another unit. So then it becomes, again, which was the unit I went into or which is the one I'm marrying? And it's 50-50. It could be from the kosher, it could be from the non-kosher. And that's also, you could say it like this, that when you're on the inside, it's kind of which one is it? When you're looking from the outside, we view it more from perspective. And then you could say, we look at it as the whole, one second, you could say, right, when you're looking from a distance, you could say, well, which one did it come from? And then we look at it as how many kosher stores are there, how many non-kosher stores, right? We view it, it's also viewing it as a group, but as a group of what's the strength of, what's the majority position? Okay, I'm not explaining this one as well. I was concerned I wasn't explaining it as well. I think I just don't understand it as well. But it's a possible way of going about whether you view them as a group, and then we view them as permitted, forbidden, and that's going to be when they're in their location. And when we're viewing them from a distance, and we're viewing them from, where we don't know, again, it's a little bit similar to the previous, which is where did it come from? Then we have to look at, well, what's the groups here? What are the groups made up of? And then we look, oh, well, this is a much bigger group than the other group, and then we can say majority. It's not so convincing, that answer. But again, there's different answers that have been offered. These are some directions to go. Before we move on, although we're going to stick with this topic, just modify something, I want to go back to a Tosfot on this page. What we started with is Rabbi Yochanan saying, if you went out and betrothed sent a messenger to betroth a woman, the messenger dies, you are now forbidden. If you're a man, you're forbidden to all women in the world. However, if we compare it a little bit to the bird case, again, we said it's not like the bird case because the bird case is different, but what happened in the bird case? The question there was, what about everybody else? Now, if there's a woman out there right now who's betrothed and nobody knows, now the question is, why didn't the woman know she was betrothed? So there's all possible answers given, which is maybe she was too young and the father took it, and maybe the father's dead already, and then you don't know. Maybe, we don't know. Maybe if she's older, you could ask her, but let's just assume maybe for some reason the woman doesn't even know. Maybe some messenger accepted betrothal on her behalf. I mean, she'd have to have agreed. So that's a little strange. But somehow, we don't know. Okay? Now, why we have this woman floating around the world who's an Eish Hadish? Why do we allow any woman to get married? Maybe, right? Or any man to marry any woman right now. There's a woman floating around who might be problematic. So why don't we forbid that? Tosfot asked that question. It's an excellent question. There's a bunch of different answers offered in different places. We're going to read Tosfot's answer, which is, it's about 4 lines down from the top of the first Tosfot on the page, end of the line, the Yud Lamed, which is the Yesh Lamar. One could suggest, really, by Torah law, we follow the majority. This is the key line. He says this is just a penalty. We're penalizing this person. Why are we penalizing him? What kind of crazy person is this? That he doesn't say who he wants to betroth. It's not a normal way to betroth a woman. The rabbis are penalizing him. If you do that and you get messed up because of it, you're stuck. Okay? Really majority rules. But, right? Anyway, kavua is a Rabbanit thing, right? The rabbis are going to say we have to be strict. That's rabbinic. But everyone else, there's no penalty. So basically what we're saying here is we're penalizing this person because we don't like, it's unclear exactly why they're penalizing, but it seems that by sending a messenger to randomly betroth a woman, that's not something we really are condone. We want to promote, and therefore we're going to punish you for doing this. So because you're punished, you have to sacrifice and you can't marry anyone, but other people can marry women, and you don't have to worry. Maybe the woman that I'm marrying is the one, right? Because it's also kavua. And why don't you say kemechza mechza dami? So that's what Tosfot answers. Now, moving on. Amar Rava. So we're now a little bit past the midpoint of Amud Aleph. Rava says, but wait a minute. We have a possible solution. Modeh Rabbi Yochanan b'isha she'en la lo bat v'lo bat bat v'lo bat ben v'lo em v'lo achot. Okay, we basically allow someone, if you find a woman to marry who has no relatives, it's not the easiest thing, but no daughter, no granddaughter, not from her daughter, not from her, not a granddaughter from her son, not a mother, not a grandmother, not a sister. Okay, and with a sister, there's one possible way though. Even if you had a sister who was married, now this is going to be interesting, and this is going to be the line that we're going to get into. The sister was married at the time the messenger was sent. Okay, the man who wanted to betroth sent a messenger. At that moment, her sister was married, which means there's no way he betrothed her. Now, what if the sister got divorced before the messenger actually went and betrothed? Now, we don't know exactly when the messenger went and betrothed, but let's say assume the messenger went out. Let's say the day after the husband the man sent the messenger, the woman got divorced. So at the moment he sent the messenger, the woman wasn't available. Once the messenger went out, the woman was already available. Well, they're going to assume right now there's no way that the messenger betrothed that woman, which means that if it's the sister of that woman that he wants to marry, he can marry her. Now, the Gemara is going to question this and say, my time. So first of all, what's the reason? Well, first of all, explain the reason, then we'll say what the problem is. At the moment where the shaliach, the person who sent the messenger, established, agency, you should be my messenger. Hava nesiba legavre. It should be nesiba, not nesiba. She was married at that moment. So when I send a shaliach to do something, it's only something that I can do myself at the time. Anything that's not a possibility for me right now, like betrothing this woman who is married at the moment, lo mishavish shaliach. So even if the option becomes available to me later, I didn't send the shaliach at that time, only to do things that were in front of me at that moment. So therefore, there's no way he betrothed that woman, and therefore it's not an issue. However, this seems difficult from our Mishna. Why? It's not. It says in our Mishna from yesterday, Hareini Nazir v'alai legalech Nazir. I'm a Nazir, and I am taking upon myself to pay the korbanot also for another Nazir. V'shama chavero, and his friend v'amal v'ani v'alai legalech Nazir. He heard me saying it, so he said, "Oh, me too. I'm going to do exactly what you did. I'm going to take upon myself nesigut, and I'm going to pay the sacrifices for a different one." If they were smart, they would each pay for the other, and that way, right? They're each compensated. They don't really lose any money, because then I know I'm covered because you're covering me, and you're set. And if not, they have to pay other people. So now, why is this a problem? The last guy who did it makes sense. Let's say I was the first and you were second. So you took it upon yourself second and you said, and I'll take upon someone's sacrifices. So you can do mine because I had already existed at the time. I had already taken upon his home. Wait a minute. Wait, me? I said I'm going to take upon myself to pay for a Nazir's sacrifices. Obviously, I must have been, based on what we said before, a Nazir who already exists. Now, you became a Nazir after me. You didn't exist at the time I made my promise. So how can I fulfill my promise? Through you. Turning out I'm a bet, we're going to therefore say the following. Why does this Mishnah work? Because what I'm really saying is, if I find a Nazir down the road, even someone who becomes a Nazir later, in this case 5 minutes later or 2 minutes later, I was also referring to that. Likewise, I'm sorry, I didn't read that right. Hachanami, likewise, in this case, with the divorce, this is what he says to the messenger. Go find me a wife to betroth. It doesn't matter if she's divorced now, even if she gets divorced by the time you find her, as long as she's divorced, go betroth her. So why would we assume that I won't make a messenger to do something I can't do right now if it becomes available to me later, if the same thing happened with the Nazir. When I take upon myself an obligation, I can do that. So why wouldn't when I send a messenger? To which the Gemara says, Amre, well, correct what we said before. It's not that it's unlikely I would do that. This is the way shlichut works. Messengers, the laws of messengers work in a particular way, and that's different from someone taking upon themselves obligations. How so? Amre lo meshave in a shaliach. You can't create agency for someone to do something for you. Ela b'milta dematze avet hashta. Only something that's in my power to do now. I can't make you a messenger to do something I can't do myself. Because you're only as good as I am. So I can only make you do what I can do myself. So therefore, b'milta de lo matze avet le hashta, something I can't do right now, lo meshave. I can't make you a shaliach. So therefore, now that explains what we said before, which is if you're standing there, if I'm a man and I'm sending a messenger to betroth a woman for me, I can only give him power, like power of attorney, to do something I could do at that moment. So if this woman, the sister of the woman I want to marry now, later on, was at that time divorced, the shaliach has no power of attorney to actually marry her off to me in the event that, right, he finds her divorced. It doesn't matter what he finds her as. It has to go by the status, but when the man originally sent the messenger. That's the way laws of agency work, and that's just not true for obligations. Vows are different. Vows I could take on something that might happen later. That's different. This is a particular law for shlichut, as we call it, for agency. To which the Gemara wants to say, is that really true? I really can't make a messenger for something that I can't do myself? Below, is that not true? Tashma, look at this source. If you say to a man says to an apitropos, someone who he wants to put in charge while he's away, and says, listen, any vows my wife takes from here until I return, please nullify them. And he did. You might have thought this works. Talmud lomar, Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says it's a special verse that says the husband does it exclusively. You can't send a messenger to nullify your wife's vows. Rabbi Yochanan Rabbi Yochanan says, what do you mean? Of course you can. If the husband could do it himself, of course the messenger could do it. To which the Gemara says, this is going to be a long process till we get to the question. Let's go back to Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yoshia's whole logic is because it says it's a special pasuk in the Torah. But had it not said that pasuk, what would we have said? Halav hachi. Without that, apitropos may fair. The apitropos could undo the vow. Now, ve'ilu gabei didei tanya. Now, can the husband do this at that moment? Is he allowed to nullify vows that she's going to make in the future? No, because it says haomer lishto. If someone says to their wife, if he stands up before his trip and says, any vows you're going to make from here until I come back are going to be ratified by me, you might have thought it works. No, he can't do that. What if he wants to nullify them, which is our topic? Rabbi Eliezer says it works, but the rabbis, which we're assuming Rabbi Yochanan must hold by the rabbi's position, says they're not nullified. In other words, now we get it. Hasal kadatach. So number one, we say ki amar Rabbi Yochanan libed Rabbanan amre. When Rabbi Yochanan holds like the rabbis, when Rabbi Yochanan says his opinion, he must be holding by the rabbis about the husband himself as well. The husband himself can't do it, and yet, if there wasn't a special pasuk in the Torah, apitropos have a mayfair. The apitropos could do it. So that means the apitropos is allowed to do something the husband can't do himself. Because the husband can't stand there and do it, but he can actually appoint a shaliach to do something he himself can't do. So this is true for Rabbi Yochanan, by the way. It's true for Rabbi Yochanan as well. Because Rabbi Yochanan says, forget gzerah katuv. He doesn't even think there is. He thinks it's totally fine for the shaliach to do it. So really it's a problem to him. Why are they focusing on Rabbi Yochanan? Because it's even a problem to Rabbi Yochanan. Even Rabbi Yochanan, who doesn't allow the apitropos to do it, but only because of the pasuk. Theoretically, it sounds like it would work. So now we have a problem. How could this possibly work? If the husband can't do it himself, how can he appoint a shaliach? Sounds like we were wrong about what we said before. But the Gemara is going to say no. Maybe Rabbi Yochanan holds like Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Yoshia thinks that the husband could actually be made fair in advance. Well, that resolves it. So now, really, the husband can do it. And because the husband can do it, therefore, he can appoint a messenger to do it. Again, technically speaking, he can't according to Rabbi Yoshia because of the verse in the Torah, but that's not what we're getting at. We're getting at the letter of the law before the verse comes along. In other words, what you would have thought. Now, the Gemara says, wait a minute. If he holds the Rabbi Eliezer that the husband can do it himself, well, then, well, then, why would he need to appoint a messenger to do something he could do himself? Before he goes away, the whole idea, we thought, was he was appointing the messenger to do it because he can't do it himself. Again, which caused the whole problem. But if you're going to say the opposite, which is he could do it himself, well, then why didn't he just do it himself before he leaves? He should just nullify the vow himself. Hasaval, he must hold Dilma Mishtalena or Ratakna or Mitridna. There's all sorts of possibilities about what could happen. As the husband, some of the commentaries say he doesn't want to do it right away, like before he leaves, let's say a few days before, because what will happen? Well, the wife might get upset at him or something. He doesn't want to start doing that until he's about to leave. Now, when you're about to leave, you all know what it's like to travel. It's very stressful. You don't remember everything, right? Remember my passport, remember my keys, right? You have to remember everything. You might forget to do it, right? You might be distracted. You might be busy. You might also, you might be ratachna, you might be upset or something and just not get to it. So we definitely don't want that to happen. And that's why he appoints an betroth. So it's true he doesn't really need to have an betroth do it. He could do it himself. But if he leaves it to himself, he might forget. Okay. Before we start with the next Mishna, let's just do a quick summary. So we started with the statement of Rabbi Yochanan. If someone sends a messenger to betroth a random woman, the messenger dies. We assume he betrothed her. Now this man can't marry anybody. Although we did see there is a woman he can marry if she doesn't have any relatives. We'll get back to that in a minute. Reish Lakish questioned Rabbi Yochanan from the bird case, which then we distinguished. One is kavua, one is set in its place, and one moves around, and therefore they have different laws. Then we asked that question of Tosfot, but why isn't every man forbidden now to marry any woman? Maybe she's the woman, and we said basically this is a penalty that we institute for the husband. Then we have Rava, who again I mentioned it before, but it only comes up now, which is there is a possibility you can marry a woman if she has absolutely no relatives, and that was the big one, or her sister was married at the time he sends the messenger. Why is that the important moment? Doesn't that seem to contradict our Mishnah, which seems like doesn't matter? You could talk about something that's going to be in the future. Well, there's a difference between agency and taking upon obligations. Then we said, wait, is it really true that a messenger can't do something that the person who sent them couldn't do themselves? We seem to see that you could, according to this situation with the machloket of Rabbi Yoshia and Rabbi Yochanan. Even Rabbi Yoshia, who says no, seems to say, but theoretically you could, were it not for the verse, which is that someone can appoint a shaliach to nullify his wife's vows when he himself can't do it at that moment. So we then explained it. The Rabbi Yoshia holds that the husband actually could do it. And then we just had to explain, well, then why didn't he do it? That was the side point. Now we get to a new Mishnah, which we'll go through pretty quickly. It's pretty simple. And then one last Mishnah and the Gemara on it. Then one last Mishnah, and that's it for today's daf. I'm taking it upon myself to shave, meaning I'm going to take upon his sacrifices of a half a Nazir. And his friend heard and he said, I'll also take on half a Nazir. Rabbi Meir said, there's no such thing as a chetzi Nazir, half a Nazir. So they both took upon themselves a full obligation. Kind of like somebody who said, I'm a Nazir only from not drinking wine. They became a complete Nazir. Also, you said half a Nazir. It doesn't mean anything. It means complete Nazir. Or you said for one day I'll be a Nazir. It really is 30 because there is no such thing. No, they really were taking upon themselves the sacrifice of half the sacrifices. So they each took upon half the sacrifices. Comes the Gemara and brings Rava's statement. Rava, and Rava's going to say they actually only disagree in a very particular case. They all agree. If you said it very clearly, half the korbanot of a Nazir on me, of course, you would bring half the korbanot of a Nazir. Korbanot chatzi Nazir alai. If you said the sacrifices of a half a Nazir, kule korban bayatuye. You clearly have to bring the entire korban because there's no such thing as the korban of a half a Nazir. So you would bring the whole, because there's no such thing as a half a Nazir, so you bring a whole. My timer. What's the reason? There is no such thing as Nazirut per half, right? Half a Nazir. What's the issue then? They're arguing over the particular language in this Mishna. Rabbi, so again, you said, Harei alai legalech hatzi Nazir. So now, you didn't actually mention also sacrifices in the sense. Now, Rabbi Meir Sava, when this connects with something we saw a few days ago, Kevan damar harei alai, the first part is harei alai. So, you already accepted in the words harei alai, I'm going to accept myself, all the korbanot of a Nazir. Then what happened? When you add the word chatzi Nazir, which doesn't mean anything, lav kol kamine. That's basically a meaningless statement. Rabbanan savre sounds like Beit Shammai that we're going to see, right? Meir is more like what we saw Beit Shammai. Sorry, he's more like Beit Shammai. The rabbis are going to be more like Beit Hillel. Rabbanan savre neder petachimohu. You took on a neder. You started saying I'm going to take on all the sacrifices, but then you corrected yourself and said, well, I'm only taking on half. So we take on half, and that works. Okay, so that's Chachamim. That's the case they argue about. New Mishnah. Hareini Nazir l'chashiyeli ben. I'm going to be a Nazir when I give birth to a son. My wife gives birth to a son. V'nolad lo ben, and he has a son. Harei Nazir. That's pretty obvious. But what's the chidush here? What's the new unique halacha? Well, son means particularly only son, male son. Nolad lo bat, if you had a daughter, or a tumtum and androgynous, people who are doubt, right? It's not clear whether they're male or female. Eino Nazir, you're not a Nazir. But imamar kshieli vlad. But if you say when I have a child or an offspring, then that's a gender neutral term. Afilu nolad lo bat tumtum androgynous harei ze Nazir. Okay, so as soon as you have a child, it doesn't matter what child, you're going to be a Nazir because that language included. It was a gender neutral language, included anyone. We'll end here for today. Wishing everybody a Shabbat Shalom and a Shavua Tov, and we'll meet up on Sunday. And don't forget, a new course is starting Sunday, so we hope to see you twice on Sunday. Or at least, if you can't make it Sunday to the class, it's the kind of class that you can learn digitally on your own. Again, it's a class in accidental murderer, and invite you all to join the class. It's a Zoom class. The Zoom part and the breakout rooms are meant for women to have a space to be able to learn with other women. And if you're a man and you want to study it, you can do it all digitally online. The classes will go up the next day, and they'll be available forever on our website. Okay, have a great Shabbat.